This video was brought to you by my patrons. Thanks! Content warning for some discussions of racism, sexual assault, suicide, and problematic depictions of people of color. And spoiler alert for all of Stargate SG-1, Arc of Truth, Continuum, and the original Stargate film. And, if you're gonna get bent out of shape over a queer Jewish woman discussing her opinions on religion and the military and representation and stuff, you should leave now. Gateworld's YouTube channel has loads of interviews with the cast and crew of this show. Just go watch those, you'll have more fun. And now for your regular reminder that art is indeed subjective. So let's get a move on. Somewhere around 2007-ish, my best friend in high school did me a huge favor by sitting me down and introducing me to her favorite show, Stargate SG-1. It wasn't love at first sight, but once I was properly hooked on this show, I went so far down the rabbit hole that I actually know the lyrics to the theme song. Yes, there are in fact lyrics.
Stargate, it's a great big world. With a great big swirl and you step inside to another world.
We're talking Stargate, it's a crazy trip. You can go really far and you don't need a car or even a ship. There's Colonel O'Neill and Carter and Daniel and Teal'c.
Look out for that gold.
So with that, let's talk about Stargate SG-1. Stargate SG-1 was created by Brad Wright and Jonathan Glassner, based off the 1994 Roland Emmerich film, Stargate. It was actually the first of a planned trilogy for Emmerich, but the concept of the Stargate itself, a giant ring that allowed one to travel to other planets, seemed to have limitless potential to Brad Wright and Jonathan Glassner. The explorers only visited one world in the film, but with 9 chevrons and 38 symbols on the ring, the possibilities seemed endless. Wright and Glassner had worked on Outer Limits together, and unknowingly, both started independently preparing to pitch a concept to MGM. The president of MGM, John Symes, greenlit the project on the condition the two of them worked on the show together. Along with Wright and Glassner, the show quickly amassed a creative team of writers and directors, including Martin Wood, Peter DeLuise, Robert Cooper, Joseph Malazzi, Paul Mully, Andy Bakita, Catherine Powers, Damien Kindler, Alan McCullough, and many, many more. So with all that out of the way, let's talk about the cast.
I'd have busted you out, blown this to all.
Our lead on the show for most of its run was one Richard Dean Anderson playing Jack O'Neill. He's probably best known for playing the titular Angus MacGyver on MacGyver.
You used to be MacGyver, McGadget, McGimmick. Now you're Mr. McUseless. Dear God! Stuck on a glacier with MacGyver!
It was actually the head of MGM who called Richard Dean Anderson and asked if he was interested in the part. What RDA quickly realized was that the character of Jack O'Neill, as portrayed in the film, was not the sort of character he wanted to play.
Because, as portrayed by Mr. Russell, it was a little more stoic than I think I could endure over a long period of time. I had to make sure that they were willing to put up with, well, in this case, endure my sense of humor.
Go.
And that's how we got...
It's O'Neill, with 2 L's. There's another Colonel O'Neill with only 1 L. He has no sense of humor at all.
The before and after of Jack O'Neill.
This Jack O'Neill is smarter than he pretends to be, but he is quite the goof most of the time.
We kicked their asses.
They had asses?
When Jack gets serious or gets emotional, shit is absolutely hitting the fan. Jack also picked up RDA's traits of loving The Simpsons.
Go. I forgot to tape The Simpsons. It's important to me.
And not being a huge fan of science fiction.
You've never seen Star Wars?
Well, you know me and sci-fi.
Next to him, we've got Michael Shanks playing the other major returning character from the film, Daniel Jackson.
We don't find that Lost City, we're as good as dead.
Or worse.
You can't sell that line. I defy you to sell that line.
No, don't defy me. Or worse.
Shanks has had a few other memorable TV roles over the years, like recurring parts on Altered Carbon 24 or Burn Notice. But his biggest credit, aside from Stargate, is probably playing Charlie Harris on the medical drama Saving Hope. His character Daniel Jackson often functions as the show's moral center. He's the one member of their team who isn't any kind of military. Okay, I know Teal'c isn't Earth military, but hang on. As the member of their team with a background in history, archaeology, linguistics, and humanities, his job is to try and interface with these other cultures, often advocating for them, advocating for nonviolence, advocating for understanding and empathy. I mean, even Daniel has his dark days, but if you couldn't tell, he's one of my favorite characters.
Micta Satak Oz.
Who'd you say you were? The, great and powerful Oz.
Then we have Captain Samantha Carter, played by Amanda Tapping.
Very nice.
He said very nice.
Now, Amanda Tapping has had a pretty robust career on and off camera since Stargate. She was the lead on the sci-fi series Sanctuary for a few years. She's guest starred on a few other Canadian-produced programs like Supernatural, but she also directs a lot. She's directed episodes of Stargate SG-1 and Sanctuary, as well as episodes of Primeval New World, Dark Matter, The Magicians, Supernatural, The 100, The Flash, Batwoman, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, and most importantly to me, 4 episodes of Anne with an E, including the series finale. Now, on Stargate, her character Samantha Carter is the brains of their operation. With a background in astrophysics and engineering, it's frequently down to Sam to explain a lot of dense scientific concepts to the other characters.
This time of year, the direct line between P2X555 and the Earth takes us within 70,000 miles of the Sun. I have to update the computer's drift calculation to include gravitational space-time warping.
We know that.
And in Things That Are Awesome, Amanda Tapping learned a lot of this stuff in order to rattle it off as authoritatively as she did. She stated that she wouldn't remember all of it a week later, but she understood all the concepts she discussed as her character said them. Sam's struggles on the show were often interpersonal. Anybody she had even a vaguely romantic relationship with died, barring Jack O'Neill and Pete Shanahan.
I especially like the ending where I get to smooch somebody and he doesn't die. I'm the Black Widow of Stargate. Now you die!
But mostly, she was just exceedingly competent at her job, often to the detriment of her life outside of work. And last but not least, we've got the alien Teal'c, played by Christopher Judge.
Lucy, I'm home.
I am not Lucy.
Now, outside of Stargate, Chris Judge is probably best known for his voice work. He played Kratos in the recent God of War video games, and he voiced Magneto/Magnus on the cartoon X-Men Evolution. And in Things That Are Very Funny, Chris Judge in real life is probably the farthest from his Stargate character.
I will give you the warning that I always give. I have ADD. Let's see.
And mild Tourette's.
So being still and quiet are not necessarily his favorite things.
You said warp speed.
One more. Come on, warp speed.
Do you believe in magic?
And Judge has been very upfront about the fact that Teal'c was very underwritten in the early seasons.
It's quite funny for me as an actor to look back on, because season 1, basically, he was a mute.
To the point that they invented Teal'c's meditation ritual, Kel Norim, because Judge was falling asleep during briefing room scenes where he would have nothing to do.
In the briefing room scenes, I said nothing, so I would fall asleep. And how I justified it was that I said I'm kind of meditating and I'm taking it all in, and then I'm not sure who came up with the actual phraseology Kel Norim, but that's how Kel Norim started.
Now his character Teal'c is...
Indeed.
Teal'c is awesome, okay? He's got a lot going on, but just know he's stoic, loyal, loves Earth pop culture.
Darth Vader. Die Hard.
I believe the Canucks of Vancouver are superior warriors.
And the directors take every available opportunity to put this man in ridiculous hats to cover up the symbol on his forehead, which is a symbol of his former god, but we'll get to that. And leading the entire SGC, or Stargate Command, is General George Hammond, played by the late, great Don Davis.
It was a great day when I managed to say a few of the words that were written.
Which words did you have trouble with?
Any that had more than one syllable.
He was a character actor with a lengthy filmography. His most memorable role, aside from General Hammond, is probably Major Garland Briggs on Twin Peaks. Hammond was sort of a fatherly figure to the whole team, a cool head under fire, and one time he did this. There's also Dr. Janet Fraser, played by Terrell Rothery. Her job was to try and keep Stargate Command alive when they kept going to alien worlds and dealing with and bringing back wild crap every goddamn week. Now, there are a lot of minor characters of import, of course. Sergeant Seiler, played by stunt coordinator Dan Shea.
Why does this always happen to me?
There's the gate technician, Walter Harriman.
I like to change things up a little bit and just say Chevron 7, locked.
Whose full name is Norman Walter Davis Harriman because the show kept changing his name over the course of the seasons. He's played by Gary Jones. We've got Teal'c's teacher and mentor Braytak, played by Tony Amendola. Daniel's wife Sharae is played in the show by Vatiari Bandera, now better known as Vatiari Hirschon. And Alexis Cruz reprises the role of Skara from the film. And the villain of the early seasons, Apophis, is played by Peter Williams. And I guess this is as good a time as any to explain if you're new. On Stargate, the main villains for most of the series were called the Goa'uld. They're these little snake things that bury into the back of a human's neck and possess them. Think Yeerks from Animorphs, but grosser, honestly. And these little bastards have quite the ego, so they use their advanced technology to pose as gods and subjugate whole populations as slaves. A lot of them rock this Egyptian aesthetic in the early years. Later, they branched out to mythologies from other cultures, and this show is sometimes a little hazy on whether the Goa'uld are appropriating existing mythology for their own ends, or if, like, entire cultures' mythologies were made up by aliens, but, put a pin in that, because we've got more cast and crew to talk about, because nobody expected this show to last for 10 years. Executive producer Jonathan Glassner stepped back from his role as executive producer after season 3, although he is credited as an executive consultant for the rest of the series. Season 5 would introduce Simon Cliffs Ball, who is another major bad guy that SG-1 would deal with through the rest of the series. And then, at the end of the 5th season, Michael Shanks told the showrunners and MGM that he wanted to pursue other projects. What he would say in interviews was that he felt the character didn't have a lot to do anymore. In a 2001 interview with TV Zone, he said, "The show was moving in a direction that seemed to hold less and less a place for my character." He went on to say he was hoping to find new challenges as an actor. In a 2003 interview, he said, "I had begun to think the show would work just as well without me, and that's when I felt I had to go." So, at the end of season 5, Daniel Jackson died. His character ascended to a higher plane of existence because that's a thing you can do on this show. I know the light squid effect is corny as hell, but trust me, we were bawling. Now, there's an impulse to inject this actor's exit with a lot of drama, but the fact is, actors get bored sometimes. There's a reason Doctor Who and James Bond are only played by the same actor for a few movies or seasons at a time. The fact that Shanks wanted to go off and do more theater or film is totally normal, and it seems there was no love lost, since he did do a few cameos in season 6.
Show me how Daniel Jackson disappears in the scene.
What is that over there?
Get and block.
Where's Bispy? That's a Greek reverse.
We're not just talking about your life. Oh, I'm into it. We're talking about your soul.
It's possible that his eventual return means he wasn't able to find the kind of roles he was hoping for outside of Stargate, and that is not inherently a value judgment. I can tell you I've met incredibly talented actors you've never heard of who are doing regional theater, while mediocre actors are getting paid millions of dollars to show up and do the same crap they've been doing for years. The entertainment industry is weird and fickle, and not every talented actor out there gets to become a household name and win 20 Oscars. Although Michael Shanks may not have had the big career breakout he was hoping for, that doesn't mean he's a bad actor or anything of the kind. Quite the opposite, I think he's been very good in the few bit parts I've seen him in outside of Stargate. But his exit from the show got some drama because fans were very upset at his exit. There was a letter writing campaign, they had ads printed in Variety and The Hollywood Reporter, and you can visit the Save Daniel Jackson website to this day. In fact, I highly recommend it. It's an adorable artifact of its time. But Michael Shanks left the show, and in his place we got Corin Nemec playing the alien Jonas Quinn. Corin Nemec had the absolutely unenviable job of trying to bring a likable character to life right away, while thousands of fans were calling and writing MGM demanding that Michael Shanks be brought back.
He was a systems lord, a system lord that are making me very nervous.
I actually really like Jonas. He's sweet and just sort of happy to be a part of the team. Also, he has this thing about the Weather Channel.
Clear skies, 73 degrees.
There are at least 500 other channels, you know.
But this one is fantastic. I mean, you have all of your weather from all over your planet right here.
It's adorable. Also, he's constantly trying to prove himself to the rest of the team and has a lot of guilt he's carrying since Jonas was kind of tangentially involved with Daniel's death. I just think Jonas gets a bum rap, and I like a lot of Jonas-centered episodes in season 6. I think he's great.
Why was I not informed about the X-302?
For example, it might not be that obvious to everyone, but this man is actually very upset.
Then in season 7, we would lose Tara Rothery's Dr. Janet Frazier and gain Robert Cooper as co-executive producer on the show. In the later seasons, he had a bigger role on SG-1 so Brad Wright could oversee the spin-off Stargate Atlantis. But season 7 is also when Michael Shanks came back to the show, and just in time too, because Richard Dean Anderson was getting tired. Starting with season 6, RDA started having more limited availability for Stargate, and the reason was twofold. First, he had a young daughter back in Los Angeles, and the filming in Canada was keeping him away from her for long stretches, which he didn't love. Also, he was getting older and had had multiple knee surgeries by this point, which was making the action-heavy show harder to do. In seasons 6 and 7, the writers kept having to come up with ways to write RDA out of the show for chunks of episodes. He's sick, he's injured, he's off planet with the Tok'ra. By season 8, he was the new head of the SGC, replacing Don Davis, who was 62 years old at that time. Davis would show up for the occasional cameo all the way into season 10, but the actor was largely retired. He passed away in 2008 at the age of 65. But with Richard Dean Anderson's Jack O'Neill running the SGC, he could be in episodes less while still having a presence on the show, although eventually he did call it quits. Amicably, of course. He showed up for cameos in seasons 9 and 10, and he said back in 2018 he would be happy to come back for more Stargate now that his daughter's off at college. But with season 9, we had the true passing of the torch as RDA left the show and we get a whole slew of new cast members. First, Beau Bridges was brought in as the new head of the SGC, General Hank Landry. He was a bit of a hard nose compared to Don Davis's more paternal General Hammond. And for the team, we got Colonel Mitchell, played by Ben Browder, and Claudia Black as Vala Maldoran, who had done a one-off episode in season 8 with Michael Shanks called Prometheus Unbound. And everybody liked her so much they brought her back for 5 or 6 episodes in season 9, and they made her a series regular in season 10. And the base finally got another recurring Doctor character with Lexa Doig's Dr. Lamb. Fun fact, Lexa Doig is Michael Shanks' wife. And I'm just gonna say it, seasons 9 and 10 are genuinely my favorites. I think the new bad guys, the Ori, are really cool, but mostly I think the new cast members injected a lot of life and energy into the show. If I'm just gonna put on some Stargate and binge a few episodes, I'm gonna pull up seasons 9 and 10.
See, that is what I'm talking about.
Browder's Cameron Mitchell is a genuinely fun and interesting character. He can be goofy, but he's also got a lot of darkness that comes from past traumas. I just think he's great. Ben Browder came onto the show willing to give 110%. It turns out he was actually in the running to play John Shepard on Stargate Atlantis the year before, but that role went to Joe Flanagan, and the next year they needed a new team member, and Bob's your uncle. When he was cast, he watched the previous 8 seasons of the show to prepare, which is part of the reason for the running gag about Mitchell reading all the mission files while he was recovering from his injuries.
PX-7377, the Crystal Skull.
You really did read every report from every mission we ever went on, didn't you?
I was in that hospital a long time and they were all riveting.
and he was really into doing his own stunts, which is part of the reason Mitchell tends to get thrown around so much. And then there's Claudia Black's Vala Maldoran.
Thank you so much for the lovely greeting party. We all had a wonderful time searching each other, didn't we, boys?
I just love her so much. Her and Michael Shanks have amazing chemistry that the show would capitalize on, and why, yes, I do ship Daniel and Vala. I'll get to that too.
Let's make babies.
In later seasons, Vala gets to show her vulnerabilities and open up a little more, and I love her so much. Also, yes, Claudia Black and Ben Browder were on Farscape together, which gave them great chemistry on Stargate and also led to one of my favorite gags in the 200th episode.
Oh, son of a Hazmot!
So basically, the show trucked along through seasons 9 and 10. In the 10th season, we got our final big bad Adria, the immaculately conceived figurehead for the Ori, played by Morena Baccarin. Oh, and I meant that literally. Adria is a product of Immaculate Conception, because Claudia Black was actually pregnant at the end of season 9, and this was how they wrote that in. Now, it turns out they had been expecting the show to get cancelled pretty much from season 6 onwards. Season 8's ending is somewhat notorious as being an attempt at a series finale in case of the show being cancelled.
So, what's the twist? No fish?
But it wasn't the end, and so season 9 was treated like a fresh start with new bad guys and new teammates. They said that by season 10, they actually weren't expecting to be cancelled, and they had a whole 11th season planned out, but unfortunately, they were cancelled, and so they scrambled to write the series finale called Unending, and the planned 11th season was squeezed into a TV movie called Arc of Truth. And they did one more standalone film called Continuum, which isn't my favorite, but whatever. Now, I want to talk about my favorite scenes and this and that, but first we gotta talk about the problems.
Upon lifting the log, then place it on the ground.
So this show made choices sometimes. I could talk about the capital C choices this show made during its run when it came to the costumes. Oh my god, between these giant hats, this guy, these guys, the helmets that go like this show made choices that are sometimes extremely funny. And I need you to know, there are some real crunchy episodes in the early seasons. Some proper duds. The creators know. They know Emancipation and Hathor were bad. Let's not even talk about Broke a Divide. I don't want to spend too much time on these because the people behind these shows were always the quickest to look back and make fun of their own ridiculous choices.
We've already established that 1 shot stuns and 2 shots kills. Nick just shot everybody twice.
So 3 shots disintegrates them.
That is quite possibly the stupidest thing I have ever heard you say.
But at a certain point, I would say around season 3, Stargate hit a comfortable groove. They were never really trying to break boundaries. They occasionally got innovative with camera techniques or special effects, but in terms of storytelling, Stargate got comfortable in telling certain types of stories and stuck to that by and large. This is not a critique, this is an observation. Stargate SG-1 found a niche and went, this is good, and that's part of its charm.
Need I remind you, Dr. Jackson, of the dangers that we're trying to defend Earth against?
Oh, could you? I mean, go slow.
But I think that might also be why parts of the show have aged poorly. This Canadian-American production was largely made by white men, and one gets the feeling that nobody was really thinking too hard about having most of the people of color in their cast playing either religious fascist villains that are very racially coded. For example, Lord Yu, played by actor Vince Cristello, and based on either Yu Huang, aka the Jade Emperor, who is a prominent figure in Chinese mythology and Tao theology, or Yu the Great, who was a king in ancient China. Apparently, the show contradicts itself a bit on the history of this character. And remember I said the show is unclear if the Goa'uld invented these mythologies or appropriated them? I'm pretty sure we've gotten cases of both, but often we're just introduced to Nirti, the Hindu god of death and sorrow. Is she appropriating Hindu culture, or is this show saying evil aliens invented other cultures' mythologies? The appropriation bit would make for actually well-defined villainy and separate these caricatures from the mythology they pretend to represent. But the show tends to waffle on this point, which is a pity. Oh, and remember Lord Yu? Well, He's usually introduced with a variation on this joke.
The second gold representative we're expecting is you.
Me?
You go, you.
You think you hung us out to dry?
I'm not going to touch that, sir.
Most of the other people of color on the show are members of the Goa'uld slave race, the Jaffa, who are, enslaved.
That thing, what's it symbolize?
Slavery to false gods.
Right on.
And they are also the military force working for the Goa'uld to subjugate the rest of the population on planets under Goa'uld control.
They are basically his stormtroopers, his SS.
Now, we don't have time to unpack all of that.
Like, aside from Teal'c, we don't have any cast regulars who are people of color at the SGC. There's one or two recurring bits, but not much. So humans on Earth are almost exclusively portrayed by white people, and the off-world alien human folk are often people of color, and it's a messy allegory, okay? I think as the show progressed, the writers either learned more or started listening to Chris Judge more. Once we started getting into Jaffa liberation storylines, it gets a bit better with regards to the Jaffa. I think it got a lot better in the last 2 seasons when the Ori became the new big bads of the series. But with all that said, I also wouldn't really recommend digging too deep into the behind the scenes because people say some wild shit.
Yes. I'm always hooked on Ebonics when I'm around you. First class produce, which is first class produce, is what he was saying. First class produce. And I'd say, hi, it's Peter. I'd like to speak to Derek. And he'd say, okay, 1 minute. Delek, phone for you. And so that's how we came to this name, Delek.
Cut to the Jewish community watching Star Trek going,
oh, they stole
what?
our thing!
I can't believe
lady, they stole the gesture.
I told him to close his eyes.
Oh, get the dog.
It's not good, you guys. I sincerely hope these people have learned and grown since then. A lot of these statements are 15 to 20 years old now. I don't know them, and I'm not really following their current work, so this may not be indicative of their views now, but yikes! I will also say the treatment of women on the show tended to be a little wild.
And just because my reproductive organs are on the inside instead of the outside, doesn't mean I can't handle whatever you can handle. A, women don't talk like this. B, why can't she just be a member of this team without constantly raising the flag that she's a woman?
The only reason Samantha Carter isn't worse is because of Amanda Tapping. For example, when she was first cast, she was a young, unknown actress, and at her first costume fitting, they were trying to put her in a push-up bra and a little tank top, and Amanda Tapping panicked. She recalled in an interview, "I'm not that, and this character isn't that. And if they wanted a blonde booby bombshell, they'd cast the wrong girl." I remember crying in Christina McQuarrie's little wardrobe changing room and saying, "Why are they asking for this?" I was told I was going to go up to the executive producers and show them this little look, and I said, "No, I can't do it. Maybe they've made a huge mistake." It turns out it wasn't Brad and Jonathan Glassner at the time, it was networks and whatever. It was different people who were making that decision, but I freaked, and I guess Christina went up to them and said, "She's uncomfortable, and this is not what the character is to her, and maybe you can come down and explain to her why you want this incredibly strong, feisty woman to be this." And so they said, "Don't worry about it." Literally, the only reason we didn't get sex object Samantha Carter was because Amanda Tapping cried, and God bless her. I mean, the show still managed to pull some crap with her too.
Unless you work with Amanda every day, is it...
Interesting framing.
Thank
there,
you,
Martin.
thanks. Thank you.
A little side there.
That was actually a photo double.
No, really wasn't.
But it was much worse for any female day players who were put into all manner of ridiculous outfits. The writers even said point blank in one commentary that this outfit was to try and compete with Star Trek Voyager in the ratings.
Because you can tell by the fact that she's half naked. I just can't stop mentioning it, can I? Yeah, this was during a time during the show where we were trying to bump up the ratings. We were taking our cue from 7 of 9, thinking that might help the show. And in fact, we didn't need half-naked, really hot, skilled actresses walking around.
The most egregious example of this is, of course, the full frontal nude scene in the pilot episode. Apparently, Vaitiari Hirschon had signed a contract agreeing to do this scene topless. but it appears the studio executives at Showtime changed their mind and she was pressured on set to do this scene fully nude. This is the version of the episode you will see if you pull up the show on Netflix. Executive producers Brad Wright and Jonathan Glassner never liked the nudity since they saw Stargate SG-1 as a family show. After several years of tinkering, they released Children of the Gods, the final cut, which removed the nudity and also this line.
And just because my reproductive organs are on the inside instead of the outside doesn't mean I can't handle whatever you can handle.
Among other changes. But it sucks that everybody on set caved to the whims of the studio executives since, according to Vaitiati, she was later forced to sign a different contract agreeing to the full frontal nudity, which was used in the episode after they told her explicitly it wouldn't be.
So I guess that's what Showtime wanted.
Yeah.
You know, it's what they wanted. And I'm like, no. So they
That's not what you contracted for.
Yeah. So they showed me the part in the office, and I went, of course I was shocked because that's not what I went in, you know, with that. So they made it seem like the premiere can't go on tomorrow, like it was next week or something, unless I sign this. I felt like, oh my God, it's gonna be my whole fault if I don't sign this, you know, but so I was very hurt. I was very shocked, but it is what it is. It happened, and that's it.
Although most of it isn't quite so heinous, there is a lot of male gaze on this show, and again, even more if you listen to the commentaries.
How many times did we have to reshoot this because you could see Amanda's G-string?
We did.
That's what the people watching this want to hear.
There's also this bizarre strain of American exceptionalism on the show, which is wild since a lot of the creators are Canadian. Usually it comes with Jack being rude to other cultures, but anytime it happens, the situation is always so extreme the narrative frames our heroes as good and correct.
If you would try to understand.
No, I won't.
In any other situation, our team would be assholes, but, you know.
You claim to love knowledge, yet when you find something you don't like, you demand that we change to please you.
No, it is not to please me.
I'm not gonna go too deep on this, but I will recommend Skip Intro's video on the MCU and American exceptionalism if you want to learn more about that. And I'm not even gonna dig into every time Stargate SG-1 did what I like to call the like the episode where SG-1 participated in an alien civil war, or the episode where SG-1 participated in an alien civil war and helped the pro-eugenics side.
How they reproduce, indiscriminately, with no regard for genetic purity.
Or the episode where Daniel murdered a bunch of Goa'uld babies.
I wonder what the actual Jaffa death count is. 'Cause we might have to go down to the Union and be processed for war crimes or something.
The episode where they interrogated and attempted to torture Apophis along with his human host.
Help me.
No.
All the times they attempted to genocide the replicators who are shown to be a sentient species. The time they planned to use a nerve gas on the Goa'uld. The episode where Sam blew up a sun.
You know, you blow up one sun and suddenly everyone expects you to walk on water.
Honestly, the entire series is based around fighting an intergalactic war that is being kept a secret from the American public and often operates without Senate oversight to provide checks and balances on the decisions being made. And most of the time, when oversight committees happen, they are framed as villainous and then the narrative makes them so.
We're gonna blow some Jaffa up. They're not bad Jaffa, they're just brainwashed, so we're gonna blow them up to make a point.
But I would say overall, my biggest issue with the show is, well, its relationship to the American military.
Have you met General Ryan?
The General Ryan?
Thus far, we like your work.
Thank you, sir. I like yours. Your Air Force. The Air Force. I love the Air Force.
Are we doing this? Yeah, we're doing this. So before I walk into this proverbial minefield, let me just state two things as clearly as possible. Number one, I hate the US military as an institution. What America has used our military to do from the Korean War onward has largely harmed countries all around the world. The war on terror was a war for oil, that's been well documented. We messed with Vietnam and Korea, never mind the nukes we launched on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and these days we just quietly launched drone strikes on Syria. Go team. But, number two, With all of that said, I have no hatred in my heart for individuals who enlisted in the military and served. Mia Mulder actually made a fascinating video exploring why people choose to serve in the military. It's a great watch. There's a link in the description. The fact is, America is a faulty system from its foundation upwards. So for people in a lower income class, for people of color, for people who are disenfranchised for any number of reasons, the American military presents itself as an opportunity for upward mobility, for better pay and benefits, and even for an education. There's some documentation that supports the notion that military recruiters deliberately prey on lower income neighborhoods. In the 1980s, the term poverty draft was coined, although, according to a 2007 article, today military recruiters react angrily to the term poverty draft. They parse terms in order to argue that the poor are not good recruiting material because they lack the necessary education. Cool. And yet, a 2017 Department of Defense poll showed that 49% of young people said that a reason they joined the Army was to pay for their education. Because America is a broken system, and for some, the military can be a way into slightly better circumstances, but at what cost? A 2019 national survey by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration found that 3.9 million veterans struggled with mental illness and/or substance abuse. 37,252 veterans were homeless in 2020, according to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The average number of veteran suicides per day in 2018 was 17.6, according to a Veterans Affairs annual report, and in June of 2021, the veteran unemployment rate was 4.8%, according to the U.S. Department of Labor. So, it's not awesome. And the military sells itself as an opportunity. And, also you get to do cool stuff and also brotherhood. That's certainly what you get from any of the hundreds of movies and TV shows made with approval from the Department of Defense. And there has been a lot written about the ties between the military and Hollywood. In exchange for access to military gear and such, many Hollywood productions cede a certain amount of story control to the military. So the American military then gets to control how they are portrayed under the guise of accuracy. Of course, sometimes the corrections they want to make are about accuracy. I know on Stargate there were many issues over the length of Sam's hair because military personnel have pretty strict guidelines on that sort of thing. According to the Department of Defense, in an article titled How and Why the DoD Works with Hollywood, they state, "While Hollywood is paid to tell a compelling story that will make money, the DoD is looking to tell an accurate story. So naturally, there can be challenges in combining the two." They go on to state that there are military officials who make a career out of this. They will allow productions to use military installations, etc. This is not something they're keeping a secret. They are loud and proud about it. According to a 2011 LA Times article, the Department of Defense regularly cooperates with Hollywood on productions large and small, from Lifetime's fictional Army-based set series Army Wives and CBS Naval Police procedural NCIS, to Paramount Pictures' Warring Robots franchise Transformers and Sony's Columbia Pictures film Battle Los Angeles, about Marines fighting an alien invasion. The military has allowed Universal Pictures to film its upcoming action movie Battleship on the battleship Missouri, and permitted Navy SEALs to appear in Relativity Media's February thriller Active Valor. They go on to say, "This relationship is important not just for recruiting, but also for guiding the behavior of current troops and appealing to the U.S. taxpayer who foot the bills. Given that less than 1% of the U.S. population is currently serving in the military, entertainment, including movies, TV shows, and video games, is key to shaping the public's idea of what it means to be a soldier." In his book, Guts and Glory, The Making of the American Military Image in Film, Lawrence H. Swede said, "Hollywood feature films have served as the most significant medium to argue for the military. And the military absolutely uses these portrayals in media for recruitment. No, really, let Richard Dean Anderson tell you himself."
I was invited by the Air Force to come to Washington, D.C. and receive an award for my representation and my portrayal, and ultimately the show's contributions. And they said enlistment was up because of the show.
That's from a Season 8 DVD special feature for Stargate SG-1. But I think it's far more important to consider how the military tries to control its image to promote the need for its own existence. One 2017 article in the Millennium Report recounts multiple instances of the military stepping in to change scripts that might make them look bad, like referencing military suicide in the first Iron Man. Jon Favreau apparently got quite heated, but the line in question was eventually cut, which makes sense since, according to the article, it is understandably a sensitive and embarrassing topic for them when during some periods of the ever-expanding and increasingly futile war on terror, more US servicemen have killed themselves than have died in combat. Far more insidious is the line that was added to the first Transformers by Pentagon Hollywood liaison Phil Straub. In one scene, after American troops have been attacked by Decepticons, he added this line for Jon Voight.
Bring him home.
Which was, quote, granting the military a protective, paternalistic quality, when in reality the DoD does quite the opposite. So Stargate SG-1 is effectively military propaganda. Anything with the DoD stamp of approval is effectively propaganda because they won't work with productions that don't bow to their whims. For example, the 2008 Oscar winner The Hurt Locker was made without DoD support, and according to Phil Straub, quote, The Hurt Locker was problematic for us because it departed from what we thought was the real military ethos. The Hurt Locker portrays soldiers in high-stress situations with PTSD who then have difficulty adjusting back into civilian life. Gee, I wonder why the military might find that problematic. And do you know how much of the national budget is funneled into the military? In 2020, it was about $712 billion. And the budget that was approved in March of last year for 2021 puts the spending at $705 billion. In 2022, it's proposed that we spend $752 billion. Why the fuck are we spending that much on the military during peacetime? There's this cyclical argument when it comes to military spending. Well, we need to spend all this money on the military because we need to be a big, intimidating country. What if there's a war? But we aren't at war. But what if we were? Imagine if we put some of those billions of dollars into combating climate change, or to fixing crumbling infrastructure, or a billion other things. In 2013, it seemed even the DoD wanted to be more efficient. By its own estimates, the DoD is operating with 21% excess capacity in all its facilities. But the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2013 blocked future military base closings. So the military is not allowed to close unnecessary bases that cost tons of money. The United States spends more than any other country on its military, and being in the military can greatly harm many who choose to be in it. And Stargate SG-1 was functionally military propaganda. Now, I will state that I don't think the cast and crew of Stargate are secretly fascist or something. Honestly, they read as just sort of nerdy. The amount of time in the behind the scenes devoted to the Carter Special, a firearm that was designed specifically for Amanda Tapping in the later seasons, or the amount of glee they take in blowing stuff up on this show. Like, I think they were just uncritically recreating this sort of military propaganda because it seemed cool. That's my guess anyway, from watching 10 seasons of the show, as well as 10 seasons of behind-the-scenes materials and commentaries. The silver lining here is that both Stargate Atlantis and Stargate Universe, I think, moved further away from that. Both shows are not set on Earth, and so for most of the time, the military is a presence in name only. Stargate SG-1 will always be an artifact of its time, for better and for worse. I think we just need to do the thing and, think critically and thoughtfully about media we consume. So now let's talk about the arc of the show over 10 seasons.
I mean, do you really think the best way to introduce the heroes of the story is to show them causing a massive catastrophe?
That's realistic.
I'm gonna try and fail to be quick about it, but this show lasted 10 years, so my quickest recap is going to take a hot minute. Also, it's been a long time since 1997. Some of y'all might need a refresher. Now to start, I'm not gonna go too deep on the film because, well...
Give my regards to King Tut, asshole.
The movie isn't that deep. In my opinion, it's mostly a silly fun time and a 2-hour prologue to one of my favorite shows. Basically, some archaeologists find this mysterious ring in the ground in Egypt, but they don't know how to use it. Fast forward a bit, and there's a linguist/archaeologist named Daniel Jackson, played in the film by James Spader. He's widely reviled by the scientific community for his wild theories about aliens building the pyramids in Egypt as landing sites. Well, it turns out he's right, and he figures out how to activate the Stargate. Meanwhile, Jack O'Neill, spelled with one L, is a colonel in the Air Force, is played by Kurt Russell, and he's reeling from the recent death of his son. The boy found one of Jack's guns, and yeah. But he's dragged out of mourning to go on a reconnaissance mission through the Stargate. So Jack, Daniel, and a bunch of Air Force fellows go through the Stargate and land on Abydos. There, they find a whole race of people being subjugated by this alien being who calls himself Ra. He talks like this, and his eyes glow sometimes. Basically, they get there and action stuff happens. Jack is supposed to blow something up, so they blow up Ra. The important bits are that Jack and Daniel form a grudging friendship. Jack gets attached to this kid Skara, and Daniel chooses to stay on Abydos with this lady, Sharae, who he's going to marry, while Jack goes back to Earth. The pilot episode of the series takes place about a year after the events of the film. A Goa'uld named Apophis busts in through the basically defunct Stargate, shoots some people, and takes this lady, and that makes the Air Force Base under Cheyenne Mountain pretty antsy. So Jack O'Neill is pulled out of retirement to provide his expertise as the leader of the last team that went through the Stargate. He meets General Hammond and Samantha Carter.
Captain Samantha Carter reporting, sir.
And after a brief communique with Daniel through the gate, he leads a team to Abydos. There, Jack gets to reunite with Daniel, Sharae, and Skara. Sam and Daniel make friends and get to be very nerdy together.
I knew I'd like you.
And Daniel has pieced together that this cartouche might have more gate addresses, so the gate can go to more places. Unfortunately, Apophis shows up and wreaks some more havoc, shoots some more guys, and takes Sharae and Skara. This sucks. Everybody agrees that it sucks, and so they all return to Earth to regroup, and Daniel comes with them. He tells the people of Abydos to bury the gate behind them.
Nothing good can ever come through this gate. Do you understand me? You came through it, Daniel.
We also get to see what's happening to the women they kidnap, and, well, Apophis has a partner named Amunet who needs a new host. Remember, the Goa'uld is just the snake living inside a human host, so we get 2 scenes of the Amunet symbiote choosing a host. They weren't great, and when the symbiote eventually chooses Sharae, it's not fun to watch.
What I said to MGM is, why don't we create a box set that when a family gets one for Christmas, they want to sit down with their kids, and they go, oh, Stargate, I love that show, and then they put in Children of the Gods, and there's a full frontal nude rape scene.
And then something like this comes along.
Back on Earth, Daniel and Jack catch up a bit, and everybody tries to figure out what to do next. Then one of the guys who was pretty badly injured wakes up and tells them he saw the gate address Apophis dialed. The gang head off to find Apophis, and this goes pretty poorly for them, but they do find Skara and a whole gaggle of other folks who have presumably been stolen from their home planets. At one point, this guard questions Jack, and Daniel explains they're from Earth. Then Apophis and Sharae, now possessed by the Amunet symbiote, show up to choose another host to be
the children of the gods.
They choose Skara, and it sucks. Also, Daniel keeps trying to get through to Sharae.
Something of the host must survive.
It doesn't work, and he's very sad about it. So, after taking Skara, Apophis orders his guards to kill the rest of them. Jack tries appealing to that one guard from earlier.
I can save these people!
This guard, Teal'c, says that many have said that, but...
But you are the first I believe can do it!
Hell yeah! He helps them fight the other guards and they bust out of here. As everybody else is escaping, Teal'c hesitates in joining them. He says he has nowhere to go, and Jack tells him,
For this, you can stay at my place. Let's go!
We also learn Teal'c is a Jaffa, a genetically engineered human. Jaffa carry larval Goa'uld in these stomach pouches. When a Goa'uld matures, it can take over a human host, and the Jaffa gets a new larval Goa'uld in there. Without the symbiote, the Jaffa would die. It's another way the Jaffa have been enslaved by the Goa'uld. So, after some more to do, they get back to Earth and they bring all these refugees with them, and Jack recommends that Teal'c join their new team, SG-1. For the rest of the season, we watch these 4 explore new worlds, fight the Goa'uld, and bond as a team. Daniel wants to get Sharae back, Jack wants to get Skara back, Teal'c wants to free his people from slavery, and Sam likes science. They meet the Nox this season, who are basically all-powerful pacifists who keep to themselves. My personal favorite episodes from this season are Bloodlines, where we meet Teal'c's son Ryak, his wife Drayak, and his mentor Braytak.
I could snap you like kindling. How could you bring these Hashak with you?
Hey. Who you calling a hassock?
The episode Korai, where Teal'c gets put on trial for some of the stuff he did while he was first primed to Apophis, and the rest of the team represents him.
You chose to kill one that day to save many later. Is that right?
It is correct.
Solitudes, where Sam and Jack get stuck on an iceberg thanks to a glitch with the gate.
Even if all SG teams started searching right now, the mathematical probability of them...
Captain?
It's actually Antarctica. Turns out Earth has 2 stargates. And Tin Man, where the team get cloned and this man says...
Comtreya!
A lot. At the end of the season, Daniel gets stuck in a parallel dimension, which gives him some clues about the near future where Apophis plans to come to Earth and blow it up. He comes back to warn everybody, and at the end of the season, they try and stop Apophis, and also bump into Skara, who is now possessed by the symbiote Chlorel. It's not great. The premiere of Season 2 has them foiling Apophis' plan, but Apophis and Chlorel get away in the nick of time, and everybody thinks Daniel might have bought it, but he also gets away in the nick of time.
Space monkey.
For the rest of the season, we watch these 4 explore new worlds, fight the Goa'uld, and bond as a team. Daniel wants to get Sha're back, Jack wants to get Skara back, Teal'c wants to free his people from slavery, and Sam likes science. At one point, Sam gets taken by a Goa'uld named Jolinar, who claims to be part of a rebel faction of Goa'uld called the Tok'ra. The Tok'ra are different since they prefer to take hosts who consent to the process, which is cool. This one is called Martouf. He had a thing with Jolinar and likes Sam, so don't get attached. Also, Sam's dad Jacob has cancer, and blending with a Goa'uld can also do wonders for one's health, so eventually Sam brings her dad to meet the Tok'ra Selmak, and they both agree to the procedure. So Jacob and Selmak are joined, and Jacob stays with the Tok'ra, but he visits a lot, so it's chill. They also meet the Asgard this season, and they look like this. This one is named Thor. He's our favorite. They also learn a race called the Ancients built the Stargates, and that there was once an alliance of 4 great races. The Ancients, the Asgard, the Nox, and the Furlings. We'll get to the Furlings. My favorite episodes from this season are The Gamekeeper, where we get some more backstory for Jack and Daniel. It's quite tragic. Message in a Bottle, where Jack gets pinned to a wall and Teal'c says this line,
"Undomesticated equines could not remove me."
And 1969, where the team accidentally travels back to 1969, and it's one of the funniest episodes in the series so far.
Me and Jenny, we're even thinking of crossing the border up to Canada.
For what reason?
You know, man, the war.
The war with Canada.
At the end of the season, Jack is woken up in a strange place that he's told is Stargate Command in the year 2077. They use a Tok'ra memory recall device on him to find out who put him in cryostasis, and they tell him his friends are all dead. Then we see Sam and Daniel get woken up and put through the same rigmarole. It's all part of a big ruse to do another Goa'uld invasion. Teal'c is back at the SGC, and when he wakes up in the infirmary, he sets out to find his teammates. Also, the whole big plot has been set up by Hathor. She was in another episode where she had horny powers. It sucked, but whatever. Now she's just trying to do regular dastardly Goa'uld stuff and threatens to implant one of the 3 humans on board if they don't tell her the codes to break into the SGC and stuff.
You will not enjoy the alternative.
You really should do something about the breath.
In Season 3, they escape, foil her plan, blow a bunch of stuff up, and we're off to the races again. For the rest of the season, we watch these 4 explore new worlds, fight the Goa'uld, and bond as a team. Daniel wants to get Sha're back, Jack wants to get Skara back, Teal'c wants to free his people from slavery, and Sam likes Jack. About halfway through this season, Sha're dies. It's a really sad episode called Forever in a Day. Basically, they cornered Amunet and she was about to kill Daniel, so Teal'c shot her. Then, through some primer level stuff, Daniel sort of keeps re-experiencing Share's death. Eventually, she's able to communicate to him that she had a child with Apophis and hid the boy where Apophis couldn't find him. And Daniel promises to find the boy. He also manages to forgive Teal'c for trying to save his life even at the expense of Sha're.
I am sorry, Daniel Jackson.
You did the right thing, Teal'c.
And also, while I tell you I like this episode and I am not immune to the feelings it gives me, it sure sucks that Sha're barely got to exist as a character outside of being Daniel's wife or Amunet. She never had enough screen time to show any personality beyond being nice, and then she was fridged to further Daniel's story. That sucks. My favorite episodes of the season are Pretense, where Skara goes to the Tolans, another highly advanced civilization, and seeks to have a trial against Chlorel for the right to his own body. This guy, Nareem, likes Sam, so don't get attached. Then there's Ergo, where Dom DeLuise plays an alien Dom DeLuise.
Teal'c, help! Tree! Jump! Give him a double Jaffa kick! Me.
100 Days, where Jack gets stuck on this planet for 100 days and has to, live there and stuff. And Crystal Skull, where Daniel accidentally goes out of phase, we get some very adorable special effects, and we meet Daniel's grandpa, who says aliens like this.
Giant aliens.
Also, this happens.
Jack, don't be an ass.
Jack, don't be an ass.
Daniel?
Yes?
Towards the end of the season, they find Share's child, and they end up leaving him in the care of an ancient named Oma Dasala. She's an ascended being, which means she exists on a higher plane as pure energy. She's basically an all-powerful being, she knows stuff about the future, can mess with the weather, etc. Ancients and sometimes other people can ascend, it's a thing. At the end of the season, Thor comes to get SG-1 for an assist with the Asgard's main nemesis, the Replicators. They're Lego spiders. They replicate and eat everything. Also, Michael Shanks had recently gotten an emergency appendectomy, so they wrote that into the episode.
Can I see your scar?
No.
In the Season 4 premiere, they beat the Replicators and were off again to explore new worlds, fight the Goa'uld, and bond as a team. Daniel is sad, Jack is mad, Teal'c wants to free his people from slavery, and Sam likes Jack. My favorite episodes include Window of Opportunity, which is the Groundhog Day episode where Teal'c and Jack have to learn ancient and also, physics in order to stop the loop.
Magnets.
It's very silly, and also Jack gets frustrated and draws a face on a plate in mustard and ketchup.
Wacko!
There's the first ones, where Daniel makes friends with an Unas named Chaka.
Ka.
This is not the first or last time that Michael Shanks had to sell speaking gibberish, but it is one of my favorites. Point of No Return, where SG-1 meets Martin Lloyd, a dude who is convinced he's an alien, and eventually he's right, and it's a little bit sad. 2010, where we see an alternate timeline future where this alien race called the Ashen is messing with Earth. At the end of the season, Sam wants to blow up a sun to try and wipe out Apophis. She does blow up that sun, but Apophis gets away and Teal'c is captured. In the Season 5 premiere, the fallout of the supernova caused by exploding a sun sent SG-1 and Apophis 4 million light-years away. It would take 120 years to get back to Earth. Replicators show up and eat Apophis' ship, and after a whole bunch of business, SG-1 gets away with Teal'c, who has unfortunately been brainwashed by Apophis. By all appearances, Apophis is dead now, but we still have to spend an episode deprogramming Teal'c. Braytac shows up for it, it's a lot. But with that sorted out, it's off to business as usual, exploring new worlds, fighting the Goa'uld, and bonding as a team. Daniel is sad, Jack is mad, Teal'c wants to free his people from slavery, and Sam likes Jack. My favorite episodes are Beast of Burden, where we catch up with Chaka, who's been taken prisoner by a bunch of people who use the Unas as slaves, and SG-1 helps them stage a rebellion. 2001, where SG-1 meets a race called the Ashen, and hey, wait a second! Once they put the pieces together, SG-1 must stop history from repeating itself. Wormhole Extreme, where we find that Martin Lloyd has had his memory erased again and begun to write a TV show that is, unbeknownst to him, based on the exploits of SG-1. It's called Wormhole Extreme.
As a matter of fact, it does say Colonel on my uniform.
It's very silly and an opportunity for the entire cast and crew to make fun of themselves for the series' 100th episode.
Wormhole Extreme, the show is based on your Stargate program.
Don't worry, it's on cable.
Then there's Menace, where we meet a young android who may have accidentally been responsible for creating the Replicators. This one is really sad, but this actress Danielle Nicolette is really good.
I didn't do it! Yes, you did! You created the Replicators. You told them to replicate at all costs.
It wasn't my fault!
Then, in the penultimate episode, Meridian, the team goes to a planet called Langara, which is in the middle of a Cold War. The Stargate is located in the country Kelowna, where they meet Jonas Quinn, the head advisor for the Kelownians, who instantly vibes with Daniel since they're both nerds. The Kelownians have a substance called Naquadria, which is a more volatile version of the mineral substance called Naquita, which the Stargate is largely made out of, among other things. Carter really wants to get some of this Naquadria. We learn the Kelownians were developing a Naquadria bomb because Cold War stuff. Daniel says that's a pretty bad idea and happens to be present when a little test with the Naquadria goes, radioactively wrong. He busts in and shuts the whole thing down, saving the day and also getting a lethal dose of radiation in the process. Back on Earth, Daniel slowly dies from radiation poisoning, and it's really sad. The Kelownians want to blame Daniel for the whole affair, which makes Jack very upset. They want the SGC to sign some statement throwing Daniel under the bus in exchange for some Naquadria. Jack appeals to Jonas on the subject, and initially Jonas says there's nothing he can do. Then he tells his government to suck it, steals some Naquadria, and comes to the SGC. Everybody on the team gets a scene with Daniel as he slowly deteriorates. They are all tearjerkers. Meanwhile, Daniel's been having visions of Oma Dasala, who encourages him to shed his earthly burdens and ascend. Finally, right as Jacob Carter is trying to use a Goa'uld healing device to fix him, Daniel sort of telepathically reaches out to Jack and asks him to make them stop since he's going to ascend.
Hey, where are you going? I don't know.
The season finale has them all fighting a Goa'uld named Anubis, who looks like this, by the way. SG-1 stops him, and at the end of the episode, Sam, Teal'c, and Jack are on their way out of the base when a strange breeze happens indoors. Everybody stops and wonders what could have caused it. Teal'c suggests a malfunction in the ventilation system. As they get into the elevator, Jack hesitates, and another breeze ruffles his hair, and he smiles. It's Daniel! Ascended Daniel made the breeze and I cried! In Season 6, the team is looking for a new fourth member, and nobody seems right for the job. Jonas is hanging around the base since he can't really go home after he defected. Then Anubis does a thing to screw with the gate.
Prepare to meet your doom.
Oh, please.
It's a bit of a slow burn, but basically the gate won't shut down. The gate's only supposed to stay open for a maximum of 38 minutes at a time, but it won't turn off, and it turns out that if the gate won't close, then eventually it will just overload and explode. They spend a two-parter dealing with this, and Jonas is the one who actually cracks it, leading Sam to the idea of launching the gate into space.
I knew you'd think of something.
Meanwhile, Teal'c is off-world dealing with the death of his wife Drayak, and then Ryak, Bra'tac, and Teal'c go on an adventure to mess with Anubis, and also Ryak and Teal'c work through some stuff.
You need never win back my trust, my son, for you have never lost it.
It's very good. At the end of the two-parter, they successfully shoot the gate into space so the Earth doesn't blow up, and Jonas joins SG-1. He spends a lot of the season trying to prove to the team that he deserves to be there, especially Jack, who has a bit of a Daniel-sized chip on his shoulder. Also, this season we meet a new form of replicator that can take a sort of human form. This one, called Fifth, likes Sam, and at one point Carter promised she would take Fifth with the team when they left the planet. Instead, they abandoned him to save their own asses. This will be important later. My favorite episodes include Descent, which is a Jonas proving himself episode, Frozen, where Jonas befriends a lady they unfroze and everybody starts mysteriously getting sick, Abyss, where Jack has been captured by Ball and is being tortured, and Ascended Daniel comes to him to help him do the Ascension thing since he's not technically allowed to help in any other way.
Ball would be dead.
Jack.
Don't think I'd stop there.
You're a better man than that.
That's where you're wrong!
It's a really good episode, lots of feelings.
You were gone. I know, I'm sorry. There was something I had to do, but I'm back now, and I promise I'll stay with you till this is over.
There's The Other Guys, where these two science dorks, Felger and Coombs, are pretty starstruck by SG-1, and then when the team gets captured by the Goa'uld, they try to mount a rescue mission. It's very funny.
Why, look, everybody! He's got
Coombs with him.
Prophecy, where, so earlier in the season, this Goa'uld Naerty experimented on SG-1 and Jonas in particular. In this episode, he starts to get visions of the future, but he also develops a brain tumor. Jonas tries to hone his future vision while getting sicker and sicker. It gives me a lot of feelings.
Get Wilson. We need you out there. Yes, sir.
There's The Changeling, an episode that was written by Christopher Judge, where a mortally injured Teal'c dreams of an alternate reality where he's a human firefighter. The dream blends with reality in interesting, trippy ways, and there's this therapist, Daniel, who keeps showing up to be cryptic about what is real and what's his dreams. Eventually, Teal'c and Bra'tac, who was also injured, get rescued. Teal'c kept them both alive for 3 days by passing his symbiote between them, but it's too weak to keep either of them alive. The Tok'ra come through with a modified version of a substance called Tritonin, which can keep Jaffa alive in place of a symbiote. It's kind of like insulin though, they need to take it regularly or else they'll die. At the end of the season, Ascended Daniel shows up with news that Anubis wants to steal something called the Eye of Ra from Abydos in order to kill all the other Goa'uld system lords. And that would be bad because it would create a power vacuum where Anubis rules all of everything, so they plan to stop Anubis.
Surrender or die! What?
There's a lot of business, but in the end, the good guys lose this time. Anubis gets the Eye of Ra and destroys Abydos while he's at it. The citizens of Abydos all ascend, including Skara. This is his last appearance in the series. Daniel also tried to stop Anubis, but this was too much meddling according to the other Ascended Ancients, so Daniel gets yoinked out of there. At the beginning of Season 7, we find out the other Ancients kicked Daniel out of Ascension Town. He's left human and naked on this planet with no memory of his life as an Ascended being, or his life before that. Meanwhile, Jonas Quinn has been doing research into the lost city of Atlantis, and that research leads them to the town where Daniel is. He, of course, does not remember them. It's very sad.
What if I don't want to be that person? What if I don't have it in me to make up for something I've done wrong?
But eventually he agrees to come back to Earth with them. There's one particularly heartbreaking scene where Daniel remembers Sharae and asks Teal'c where she is, and...
She's dead. I loved her very much.
The rest of this two-parter is devoted to stopping Anubis. At one point, Jonas gets kidnapped, and Anubis extracts information about Nequadria from him and goes to Langara to get some. Also, Daniel rescues Jonas, which is fun.
Which way? This way. Sure? Go!
At the end of all of it, Anubis got away, but SG-1 was able to broker a bit of peace with all the Langarans, and Jonas is able to go home to Kelowna, with Daniel rejoining SG-1.
We get paid for this, right? Welcome back.
From here, it's off to the races. SG-1 explores new worlds, fights the Goa'uld, and you know the drill. During the season, we learn Anubis is making super soldiers now. They look like this.
I serve Anubis.
My favorite episodes this season are Fragile Balance, where Jack gets de-aged, and it's very funny.
What's going on?
Daniel!
Sounds like him, at least the loud grating parts.
Enemy Mine, which is another Unas episode. Grace, where Sam, alone on the ship Prometheus, has a concussion and hallucinates while trying to figure out how to fix whatever's happening. Death Knell, the episode where Sam is trapped on an alien planet being pursued by a super soldier. And the two-parter entitled Heroes, where a documentary crew comes to make a documentary about the Stargate program. That way, if the secret of the SGC is ever leaked, they have this documentary to show the public. Part 1 of Heroes is mostly silliness. Teal'c refuses to talk on camera.
And he didn't happen to mention to you that part of the interview process involved actually saying something.
No.
Sam is really awkward and shy, and at one point Daniel takes off running just to see if the camera crew would follow him.
Well, I just wanted to see if he'd chase me.
Incredible stuff. But an off-world mission goes bad, and there's this huge fake-out where we all think Jack died.
Leave me alone and shut that damn thing off!
It turns out it was Janet Fraser who died. Daniel ended up accidentally filming her death, and it's truly horrific. At one point, the documentarian, Emmett Bregman, played wonderfully by Saul Rubinek, gets frustrated with everybody and has this great speech about the power of the press to reveal truth.
Nothing is worse for a free society than a press that is in service to
to the military and the politicians. Nothing!
It's a damn shame that in the end he happily makes them some military propaganda, but whatever, the episodes are still good. At the end of the season, SG-1 finds an outpost built by the ancients in Antarctica. Jack has a bunch of ancient knowledge loaded into his head. This happened once before and the Asgard helped him out. Basically, human brains aren't meant to have this much in them, and if something isn't done, Jack will die. Also, there's a spaceship fight over Antarctica. It's one of the cooler spaceship fights in the show. We also meet Elizabeth Weir, but she's going to be played by a different actress next season. In the end, they beat Anubis, and Jack gets put in stasis. The Season 8 premiere New Order begins with Dr. Elizabeth Weir, now played by actress Tori Higginson, running the SGC in place of General Hammond. Sam and Teal'c end up tracking down the Asgard who are dealing with replicators again, and Daniel is involved in peace negotiations with several remaining Goa'uld system lords, such as Yu, Camulus, and Amaterasu. Eventually, these negotiations fall through. Also, Jack gets taken out of stasis.
What is it? We don't know. You made it.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Meanwhile, the character Fifth came back and captured Samantha, trapping her in a creepy dream hallucination thing.
Because I love you.
SG-1 eventually rescues Sam, and back on Earth, Weir goes off to supervise the Antarctica outpost and join the Stargate Atlantis spinoff, while Sam is promoted to Lieutenant Colonel and Jack becomes a Brigadier General and the new head of the SGC. Season 8 is a bit of an odd year. The Goa'uld are not the threat they once were. The replicators are still mostly a thing that only show up in two-parters, and the team is down to 3 members. There's still fun episodes, but this was the year the production team thought would be their last, and we'll get there. Some of my favorite episodes this season include Avatar, where Teal'c gets trapped in a video game that's meant for training purposes, but it's slowly wearing him down instead. Daniel joins the simulation to help him escape. It's great. There's also 0 Hour, which follows the somewhat comical exploits of Jack as a general and his struggles being a leader.
You dare mock me.
Ball, come on. You should know. Of course I dare mock you.
And of course, Prometheus Unbound, the introduction of Claudia Black's Vala Maldoran, is a particular favorite. She attempts to hijack the Prometheus and basically just lies constantly about her motives while trying to regain control of the ship from Daniel. Also, at one point, Daniel has to pretend to be a bounty hunter or something and just...
Name's Olo. Hans Olo.
Then, towards the end of the season, we get another big two-parter about fighting the replicators. There's a doodad on the Jaffa homeworld Dakara that could kill all the replicators in their galaxy, and they want to use it. Also, Fifth actually built a replicator version of Sam who they have to fight, and at one point she kills Daniel.
Oh, Dr. Jackson is gonna die when he sees this.
What again?
In my other favorite episode this season, Threads, Daniel has sort of partially ascended a second time. He's not quite fully there, but for some reason it's all in this astral diner, and Omidasala is there, being cryptic as ever. It's a whole thing.
How deep is the river if you cannot see the bottom?
But one of my favorite details is while all this happens back on Earth, Jack refuses to believe Daniel is dead.
How many times have you thought he was gone? And then he shows up in one form or another. You hear that? I'm not buying it.
And at the end of the episode, he's proved right.
Don't come in.
Whoa! Hey there!
But Sam has a lot of heavy stuff to deal with this episode. First, there's her boyfriend, Pete Shanahan. You can get attached if you want, he doesn't die at least. Basically, Pete and Sam have been dating for a while, so Pete proposed, and Sam debates whether or not to go through with it since, among other things, she still has feelings for Jack. But on top of all that, her dad is sick. Selmak is dying, and without the symbiote, Jacob is dying too. He tells Sam that he wants her to be happy, and it's a big tearjerker. Sam ends up turning down Pete's proposal and says goodbye to her father, and the episode ends with Sam and Jack fishing at Jack's pond. Daniel and Teal'c join them, and that's kinda it. Like, we get an elaborate finale two-parter which does alternate timeline shenanigans and gives several actors terrible wigs, but at the end of all of it, we're back to the pond. The twist being, there's fish in the pond now.
Close enough.
I, for one, am very glad the series didn't end here, but it would have been very funny if it had. So, on to Season 9 and all the shakeups therein. We begin with Cameron Mitchell. We learn about how he was actually there at the big end of Season 7 ship battle in Antarctica and was very badly injured, requiring months of physical therapy, and now he's here at the SGC to join SG-1.
You're here to lead SG-1.
The fracturing of SG-1 from past events is nearly complete. Daniel's about to join the Atlantis expedition, Teal'c is trying to be a political leader on Dakara, Sam is off somewhere doing science. In reality, Amanda Tapping was on maternity leave after the birth of her daughter, so she's just not in the first few episodes of Season 9. And Jack is now officially retired, with General Hank Landry taking over as the head of the SGC.
Walter!
Files on your desk are the personnel folders you're about to request, sir.
About to request? Walter, I'd appreciate it.
Push the button to talk, sir.
I really like all the time we spend getting to know Mitchell in the premiere episode. I like his insecurity about being the team leader.
What if the world needs saving because I screwed up because you weren't here in the first place? How about we pretend I didn't say that?
Done.
I like when he's goofy.
Whoa! Whoa! Whoa, man! Bullets! Bounce!
Also, the montage of him interviewing potential candidates for a new SG-1 is very funny.
I was hoping you could tell me something about yourself. Something personal.
People call me Dave.
But everything gets shook up again when Vala shows up at the SGC with news. She found some info that might lead them to a hoard of treasure, but she needs SG-1's help to get there. And also she puts this alien slap bracelet on Daniel, and it turns out she didn't read the fine print on it, so if she and Daniel get too far from each other for too long, they'll pass out and possibly die.
How could you not know?
Because the person that I stole it from didn't tell me that part.
Teal'c comes back from Dakara to help, and Daniel begins translating what Vala brought, and discovers that this supposed treasure might relate to...
Mirrodin.
So it's Merlin. Merlin was an ancient. Honestly, this is my kind of crap, so Daniel figures out that the supposed treasure should be hidden at Avalon. So they go to Glastonbury, get yelled at by a hologram, and then get stuck in puzzle chambers that will crush them to death if they don't solve the riddles contained within.
I'm thinking!
Sorry, could you possibly think a little bit fast?
The universe is infinite.
No doubt it's deliberately ironic that we're in an ever-decreasing space.
They solve the riddles, Mitchell pulls a sword out of a stone and fights a holographic knight, and then the literal pile of treasure is revealed. Daniel reads a book. Vala pours gold coins on herself. It's a delight. But most importantly, they find this strange device. They bring it back to the SGC, and Daniel's pretty sure it's capable of intergalactic communication. Back on Dakara, Teal'c's friends question his loyalty to the cause when he's spending so much time with his Earth friends. It turns out, although SG-1 and Co. might have helped the Jaffa gain their freedom, at least to some degree, many don't trust the outsiders. I can't say I blame them, honestly. This guy, Garrick, eventually becomes the leader of the Free Jaffa Nation, and Teal'c isn't happy about it. So back at the base, Daniel has mostly figured out how to turn the device on. They have these 2 communication stones, and Vala wants to come with.
Daniel and I are linked.
I just point out for the record, we don't have to be.
So they pop in the stones, and both collapse to the ground. They wake up in this strange medieval-looking place, and apparently they are inside other people's bodies.
Do you think we're actually in another galaxy?
I don't know.
Why these people?
I don't know.
The pair try to blend in.
See you at prostration. Prostration it is!
Prostration it is.
With mixed success.
I was trying to politely explain what was going on, and then his wife started screaming and accusing me of being overcome, at which point I believe I suggested she might want to think about procreation with herself.
Basically, this is an ultra-religious town that believes in these gods known as the Ori, and their Bible is called the Book of Origin. They aren't allowed to learn or speak of anything that contradicts their scripture, and then at one point, Vala mouths off at a tea party and they decide to burn her alive. They say if her heart is pure, the Ori will protect her, and then they burn her alive.
Daniel!
You're killing an innocent person!
It's truly upsetting to watch, and by the way, they really did set a stunt woman on fire for this, with precautions, but still. Back on Earth, this ordeal might kill Vala for real, which is also bad, and back in the town, Vala is a burned up husk. Daniel holds her corpse, and it's so much. Then this dude shows up with his wizard staff and does a thing, and Vala literally comes back from the dead in Daniel's arms. It gives me all of the emotions. Claudia Black is killing it, and also...
Okay.
Listen, this is my trash. These two are my trash, and have been since I was 15.
I've got tingles all over. Don't flatter yourself, I'm pretty sure it's not you.
Well, Daniel thanks the weird man.
Thank you, weird man. Bye.
And the man says to thank the Ori, and that Daniel and Vala should come with him. Everybody's like bowing and stuff, and he says,
"Hallowed are the children of the Ori."
Basically, this guy, who's called a prior by the way, takes Daniel and Vala to this weird place, locks them up in a big room, and Daniel reads the Book of Origin to try and make sense of it. When the prior shows up again, they try to explain they're explorers from another world, and the prior is like, whatever, please rat out all the unbelievers in town. Mitchell encounters another prior on a planet the SGC has contact with, and it's becoming clear these folks are very believe or die types. Also, they have a thing for fire.
Seems to me those who stray get burnt to death.
In the end, Vala and Daniel end up back in the square, tied to that altar and about to get burned alive, presumably for good this time. Back at the SGC, when they see Daniel and Vala's vitals going crazy again, Mitchell and Teal'c say screw it and run the device to the gate room, activating the gate and throwing the device into the, this thing is called a kawoosh.
The unstable vortex of a forming wormhole.
Kawoosh. So they throw the device into the kawoosh that happens as the gate activates, and that disintegrates the device, which is enough to bring Daniel and Vala back. Unfortunately, that also means the bodies they were inhabiting, these two named Herod and Salus, get burned alive. Oh, and also, the Ori realize there's a whole galaxy of unbelievers to conquer, so that's bad. They all regroup, and the episode ends with a really sweet scene between Jack and Daniel, where Daniel admits that even after everything he's seen, he's afraid. And that's kinda it. Vala ends up sticking around a little longer, since it turns out the effects of the alien slap bracelet wear off quite slowly. My favorite episodes this season are The Ties That Bind, where SG-1 goes on an elaborate fetch quest to try and deal with the alien slap bracelets, and we meet a lot of Vala's underground connections, including Wallace Shawn.
Then lie naked under Adora's moons and Valahood.
Okay. It's great, thanks.
Then there's The Powers That Be, where we solidify some details of Vala's backstory. It turns out she was once host to a Goa'uld named Katesh. When she was freed, many of Katesh's former followers tortured her, believing they were still harming their false god. She ended up finding a small mining outpost that hadn't heard of Katesh's demise and exploited them for her own gain. Daniel convinces her to tell them the truth, and they put Vala on trial. This gets sidetracked when a prior shows up, starts preaching Origin, and when the inhabitants refuse him, people in town begin to get sick and die. Vala's actually able to use this Goa'uld healing device and tries to save as many as she can, but the town eventually succumbs to the will of the Ori.
Because of me, these poor souls are either going to die horribly or they're going to give in to the prior in the hopes that he'll heal them.
It's not because of you.
The prior brings a bunch of folk back from the dead, but the town is now enslaved to new false gods, and we're all very sad. The next episode, Beachhead, is not a favorite, but in it, the Ori try to set up a supergate in our local galaxy. The team try to blow it up. Vala actually has the idea that saves the day, but she is either blown up in the process or lost somewhere in the Ori galaxy, and there's no way for SG-1 to know for sure. I also love the episode Babylon, where Mitchell gets stuck with a reclusive tribe of Jaffa called the Sodan, and builds a grudging rapport with this guy. And Arthur's Mantle, where Mitchell and Sam, and later Daniel, get stuck out of phase.
Both Colonel Mitchell and Colonel Carter may still be somewhere here on this base. We just can't see or hear them.
And then there's Crusade, where Vala inhabits Daniel's body using one of those communication devices from the beginning of the season.
It's funny, isn't it? Daniel always wanted to get into my pants, and now I'm in his.
And it's not just for funsies. She is off in the Ori galaxy, and she came here to tell SG-1 some stuff. Well, first off, she's married now, and pregnant. But the sticky bit is...
I swear, I did none of the necessary bits.
It turns out the Ori are building ships and building up their ranks for a crusade to our galaxy. Vala tells them that the Ori's followers are fanatical and will not hear any truth that conflicts with their beliefs. They will kill for their gods, and the Ori have a working supergate somewhere in the galaxy. Before Vala can tell them more, the communication device on her end is destroyed by Tommen, her fanatical husband, who murders her friends, and Vala has to lie her little heart out so she doesn't get murdered too. At the end of the season, the Ori activate the Supergate and kick everybody's asses. Teal'c is stuck with the Lucian Alliance, Sam is left floating in space, Daniel's fate is unknown, and Mitchell probably made it off the Korolev in a glider before it exploded. The last shot of the season is a very pregnant Vala Maldoran aboard one of the Ori ships looking very, very afraid. In Season 10, we find out Daniel made it off the Korolev using transportation rings to get onto one of the Ori ships. Conveniently, it's the one with Vala on it, who, by the way, had her kid. The Priors tell them that Vala's daughter is the Orisai, basically a messiah-like figure in their faith, and oh hey, this sucks.
Can I hold her? She's my baby. After all I've just been through, I want to hold her.
She belongs to all who follow the path.
The kid grows at a pretty wild rate so they can get to Morena Baccarin, but 10 out of 10 for this 5-year-old actress who has no idea what she's saying. Vala does care about this child, but also recognizes that this kid is born to be their figurehead. Also, Vala names the kid Adria. She says that was her mother's name.
Stepmother, witch of a woman.
Daniel finds her on the ship, and eventually the both of them are beamed away in the nick of time. On the other half of the plot, everybody just spent an episode picking up the pieces after being thoroughly trounced. When everybody can finally regroup aboard the Odyssey, Sam points out they've been outgunned before, and outmanned.
Outnumbered, outplanned.
That's a really stupid joke, but screw it. And Mitchell says they need to come up with a new plan. So that's how the final season starts. My favorite episodes include Morpheus, where the team gets sick on an alien planet and Vala has to take a psych evaluation.
You can't cram for a psychiatric evaluation.
That's what they want you to think.
The Pegasus Project, which is the crossover episode with Stargate Atlantis.
Good luck. Listen, if the kid gives you a hard time, just shoot him. Also, he's mortally allergic to citrus.
200, which is the 200th episode of the series and a follow-up to Wormhole Extreme. Martin comes back and asks for help pitching ideas for a movie based on Wormhole Extreme.
Who makes a movie out of a series that only lasted 3 episodes?
It allegedly performed well on DVD.
It's just an excuse to basically create an incredibly self-aware sketch show.
I mean, it's not like you're gonna have an actual ticking clock on the screen.
That's brilliant.
That's ridiculous.
Trust me, Jeopardy plus ticking clock is box office.
It's great.
I mean, seriously, all these writers and they couldn't come up with anything better?
Another favorite episode is Memento Mori. This episode is for when I'm feeling like shipper trash. Vala gets kidnapped from a dinner date with Daniel.
I wouldn't exactly call it a date.
These guys are trying to extract any latent memories she might have from when she was host to Katesh. Things go sideways and Vala ends up with amnesia. And of course, it's Daniel who finally talks her down.
You don't remember it. You made a decision to stop running.
This is my trash. I also love the episode Line in the Sand, where Sam is trying to test this out-of-phase tech to basically help a whole town hide from the Ori, but things go south. Vala spends the episode trying to de-radicalize her husband.
If I put on this dress and say, "Hallowed are the Ori," will you stop mass murdering innocent people?
Teal'c and the town leader try to stop some mob mentality crap.
No God should ever ask you to kill an innocent man to prove your sanctity.
And Sam's been shot and has to walk Mitchell through how to fix the device, leading to some great scenes between them.
You have to face the fact I'm gonna die here.
No, I don't have to face that fact because I am not gonna let it happen.
I appreciate that.
My other favorite episodes are Bounty, where Mitchell and Vala go to Mitchell's high school reunion.
Well. Someone likes you.
And Bad Guys, where SG-1 accidentally ends up taking an entire party of people hostage.
Murderous rebels. Come in, please. Speaking.
I think this episode is hilarious, but apparently a lot of the show people kind of hate it. It's the only episode in season 10 that doesn't have a commentary on the DVD. Also, apparently they found out they were canceled during filming. Basically, at the end of the season, they try some more stuff to fight Adria, but the finale episode is a surprisingly introspective affair. It's called Unending, and in it, SG-1 aboard the spaceship the Odyssey get into a firefight with the Ori, and when things start to go sideways, Sam activates a time dilation field. That's a good stopgap measure, but as soon as they take down the field, they'll get blown to hell, so Sam has to figure out how to science this shit, and it takes 50 years.
I'm gonna go crazy, and I'm taking you with me.
And yes, the old age makeup is quite appalling. The creators know it looks bad. It sounds like the production was a little rushed towards the end and there wasn't time to fix it. But yeah, the team spend 50 years together aboard the Odyssey, and that's most of the episode. It's quiet and thoughtful. The lack of action allows the show to focus on character and interpersonal dynamics. It's so great. And yes, for those of you who know, this is one of my favorite scenes.
I guess no matter what you do, at the end of the day, life is too short.
So the Daniel Vala thing has been simmering for quite a while, and while Vala is so openly flirtatious with Daniel, she also freely manipulates people when it serves her interests and flirts with anything that moves, so Daniel thinks the flirting isn't serious. He hasn't had a serious relationship since Charé, and clearly he was pretty messed up about that. Not to mention his friend Sarah Gardner, who was taken by Osiris, and that was a whole thing. The boy has issues, is what I'm saying, so when Vala tries to make a move, Daniel reacts extremely badly.
Do you believe I could have any kind of serious feelings for you?
It's hard to watch, and apparently Michael Shanks and Claudia Black really pushed for this version of the scene, which I find fascinating.
Not in a million years would I ever possibly consider that person being you!
But finally, when it gets through Daniel's stupid head that Vala is not messing with him, we get this.
You better not be messing with me.
And my 15-year-old self went, yes! It's good. I like it a lot. It's certainly not the cleanest way to start a relationship, but these two are messy characters, and I think it suits them. And aside from that, we just watch time pass for these characters. Mitchell in particular goes to some dark places because this is an adrenaline junkie with PTSD, and all this time for introspection isn't a great time for him. Landry eventually dies, and then it's just the 5 of them when Sam finally figures it out. She can take down the time dilation field and use the energy from the Ori ship's attack laser thing to reverse time to a few minutes before she activated the time dilation field. This will blow up the Odyssey a bit in the process, though, and one of them needs to retain the memories of the last 50 years in order to prevent it all from happening again. Teal'c volunteers because Jaffa have longer lifespans than humans, and the shot of Teal'c as the ship blows up around him is really incredible. With time reversed, he's able to do the thing so they can just get away without getting blown up. The episode ends with everybody except Teal'c having no memory of those 50 years. Vala theorizes she probably slept with somebody.
Was it you, Muscles? It can't have been Mitchell, can it? General Landry?
And the final scene is everybody standing in the gate room preparing to go on another adventure. Sam says it must be hard for Teal'c to have 50 years of memories he can't share.
Indeed.
But Teal'c says he did learn some stuff.
Good things come to those who wait.
And they all just start spouting aphorisms at each other, including,
"Life is too short."
This bit makes me want to go fucking feral.
Just another everyday mission to save the galaxy, sir.
Indeed.
And they walk through the Stargate, and that's the end of the show. The follow-up film, The Arc of Truth, basically attempts to squeeze their entire planned 11th season into one film. It's very rushed, but there are some good scenes, like this one between Teal'c and a recently de-radicalized Tommen.
You will never forgive yourself. Accept it. You hurt others, many others. That cannot be undone.
By the end of the movie, they defeat Adria and all of the Ori, wrapping up that storyline once and for all. The other movie, Continuum, is a standalone time travel story, and honestly, a massive bummer. Which is a weird note to end this recap on, but now it's time to talk about...
Hallowed are the Ori.
So, I talked before about how the Goa'uld were a very messy metaphor for what happens when religion is used to both radicalize and oppress populations. And Stargate is about the misuse of religion.
The show has always been about religion to a certain extent. We don't really tell them what God really is. We're not dictating those things, but we are trying to point out the misuse of religion to enslave people and to, take advantage of them.
But the Ori are a much better metaphor for that than the Goa'uld, since the Ori are space Christians. And Christianity has been radicalizing and oppressing populations for the last few centuries.
Hallowed are the Ori.
And also with you. What? Huh? What? Huh? What? When?
Now, before you jump into my comments to get mad or say, not all Christians, congrats, you beat me to it. You are correct. Not all Christians are bad. Some of my best friends are Christian. Okay, but for real. It's true that not every person who believes Jesus Christ is their Lord and Savior is a bad person. Stargate SG-1 says not all Christians because we are frequently reminded that Cameron Mitchell's grandma was a good church-going, God-fearing woman.
My grandma was a bit of a Bible thumper. Weekends at grandma meant long Sundays at St. Hilda's Church of the Grand Epiphany.
And she also made him macaroons and seems like a nice lady. And while we're at it, I think it's a pretty safe assumption to make that General Hammond was Christian, just based on vibes and the fact that almost every time he sends SG-1 on a mission, he says,
Godspeed.
So if you're not one of those bad Christians, then you should get comfortable with people discussing the harm that Christianity has done globally over the last few centuries. The Crusades, the Spanish Inquisition, the Salem witch trials, most of the history of colonialism, and if we want to discuss the more recent harm that's been done by Christianity, look no further than conservative politicians and public figures. Not just in America, although remember all those Christian pastors who claimed the pandemic only killed those who didn't worship Jesus? That it was God's judgment? Or that time cops beat protesters in front of the White House so our former president could pose in front of a church with a Bible? Or how about the 127 anti-transgender laws put forward by politicians in 35 states in 2021? Laws that target trans children. Or the rampant transphobia in Europe now, where trans people can be denied healthcare by the NHS. When, fun fact, the Bible doesn't say anything about trans people. Or how about in the 80s when the Reagan administration showed complete indifference towards the AIDS crisis, which was also known as the gay disease, which led to the death of thousands, and Reagan was generally beloved for his Christian values. But Christianity isn't just hurting the gays. It's also hurting women who would like to have some goddamn bodily autonomy. From the constant attempts to criminalize abortions to limiting access to birth control, certain sects of Christianity think it's murder to abort a fetus, never mind the situation that made that baby, the age or health of the mother, or the financial distress that baby might be born into. Christianity also hurts everybody who isn't Christian. Several countries across Europe have banned the production of kosher or halal foods, and there have been rulings in Germany and France that allow workplaces to ban women from wearing head coverings such as hijabs because employers might want to appear neutral politically, philosophically, etc. Here's a hypothetical question that we all know the answer to. Do you think those women would face similar punishment if they were wearing a crucifix necklace? I could keep going and discuss the personal frustration I, as a Jewish woman, have faced when it comes to Christianity. Whether it was a former boss looking me in the eye and telling me how oppressed Catholics are because I happened to be visibly upset about the ransacking of several Jewish cemeteries that day, or my infuriating experiences with evangelical Christianity and the proselytizing that has been done at me to supposedly save my soul. I'm also fairly certain, based on the town I grew up in, that the kid who used to call me a dirty Jew and throw things was probably Christian. Like, I'd bet my savings on it. If you are a good Christian, you should be comfortable accepting the harm that has been caused for centuries in the name of your God. If you want to hear an actual Christian person talk about this, I would highly recommend Laura Crone's video on the Swan Princess movies. Listen, that video goes to some places, but she talks about this same phenomenon from the inside. Also, that video is really funny. It's linked in the description.
Lightsabers need no explanation, you fucking ghoul.
Now, when it comes to Stargate and those space Christians,
hallowed are the Ori.
So Rob Cooper, who was the sort of mastermind behind a lot of the Ori plots, right down to coming up with their fake religion, just wants you to know it is not Christianity.
It's the idea that the Ori and origin represented a particular religion that maybe we as creative people were trying to criticize.
It's a little funny how they're too afraid to even say Christianity.
Maybe even a particular religion, which was of course never really intended.
But here's the thing. Rob Cooper, like many people in Western society, grew up with Christianity as the norm. Christmas is a national holiday in Canada too. So while he may not have intended for it to come off as Christianity, boy oh boy are the Ori space Christians! From the practice of burning supposed sinners alive to the way they dress, these guys are called priors, and a prior was a designation given within Christian monasteries in medieval Europe. I know the Immaculate Conception was a way to justify Claudia Black's pregnancy, but come on. Landry calls one of them a missionary, and when they come to our galaxy, it's called a crusade. And just listen to how they rattle off their scripture.
When Hanormir fell from above and learned to fly on the way down, that was a miracle.
Right.
The Ori are space Christians, and it's an excellent metaphor since Christian extremism has been plaguing the Western world for the last 20 years or so. Like, there's this one scene in Line in the Sand where Tommen, feeling a seed of doubt from talking to Vala, speaks with a prior who demands they wipe out this entire village, and then the prior spouts some scripture.
Realizing his mistake, he ran back to the Ori, but they denied his pleas and struck down the village that welcomed him back.
Tommen disagrees with his reading and says the prior is twisting the meaning of the text to suit his purposes.
No matter what you say, I will not believe the Book of Origin asks us to massacre innocent people. And I will not stand by while the holy doctrine of goodwill and faith that I have sworn to uphold is twisted into a hammer and used to beat people down.
This same episode is also one of several occasions when Stargate quite blatantly says not all Christians are bad. Mitchell talks about his church-going grandma who used to tell him God was like a prairie windstorm.
If you look too hard, you get dust in your eyes, but there's still plenty of ways to know it's there.
But if Stargate has always been about how religion can be misused to radicalize a population, the Ori are a far better allegory than whatever the fuck the Goa'uld were doing for 8 seasons. It's an allegory that continues to be tragically relevant, and even if the writers didn't intend it, it's a powerful message that I hope makes some people do a little soul searching of their own. And so with that, let's talk about some goofs.
Bigger!
So this show had a very particular brand of humor that really feels unlike anything I've seen before or since. It's not quite as self-aware as Community would later be, but somewhere between the balls-to-the-wall earnestness of Sense8 and the crude fourth-wall breaking of Deadpool and his ilk sits this show.
Beamed out.
Is that not too convenient?
Not if you hang a lantern on it. It's a writer's term. Another character points out how convenient it is. Dr. Levant can say, wow, that was great timing. That way, the audience knows I intended for it to be convenient, and we move on.
This show is the reason I know that turn of phrase, and just so you know, they definitely did do that a lot.
Never underestimate your audience. They're generally sensitive, intelligent people who respond positively to quality entertainment.
I do not understand why everything in this script must inevitably explode.
Of course, the humor is most explicit in the 100th and 200th episodes.
I'm Christian Boucher. I'm portraying the character of Raymond Gunn, who portrays the character of Dr. Levant, which is based on the character Daniel Jackson, portrayed by the actor Michael Shanks, originally portrayed by the actor James Spader. Are you okay?
But you can see it throughout the series in episodes like Window of Opportunity.
In the middle of my backswing!
Or The Other Guys.
He is sick. I believe it is something he ate.
This show was just really silly sometimes in a way that I love. Like, I know the crew may not love the episode Bad Guys, but I love that episode.
So you take all the time you need. We're in no rush.
I'm sure the hostages would disagree with that.
Fine, we're not gonna hurt them. Unless you get cute, in which case there's gonna be killing and whatnot.
I like when this show gets weird.
Come try ya!
And I like when it gets ridiculous.
Miniaturization. Don't panic. I have calculated the distance they could possibly travel on tiny legs.
I'm fairly sure that at least some of it, especially in the early seasons, was just Richard Dean Anderson improvising.
You're alive?
Just so.
Way to go, Junior!
I'm fairly sure some of my favorite Jack O'Neill bits were not scripted like this one.
You ended that sentence with a preposition, bastard.
There's something special about how absurd this show could get while never going so far that there wasn't room for earnest emotions, often in the same episode. Like, everybody loves Window of Opportunity, but do you remember how that episode ends? With this man admitting he created the loops to try and bring back his dead wife, and then this happens?
I know what it's like.
You can't! I lost my son! I know!
The first one's is a pretty dramatic episode, but also this happens.
Don't say ca till you've tried it.
I think at its best, Stargate SG-1 did for sci-fi what MASH did for the sitcom by artfully blending the comedy and the drama to tell compelling stories. Also, one time Daniel pretended to be an airplane and it was incredible. Okay, technically I think it was a UAV, but whatever. And seriously, some of the in-jokes in Wormhole Extreme and the 200th episode are just incredible.
And you're telling me an Air Force officer can shoot a giant alien without having to be weightless?
Sure, why not?
Now I've decided I'd quite like to be a part of something. A regular part, if you catch my drift.
The entire bit about how to write around losing a lead actor is just characters saying exactly how they handled RDA's absence for seasons 6 through 8, and also...
How am I supposed to tell a story without my lead character?
Easy, just bring in a character to replace him.
I love that. Or... Okay, so you know the Furlings? I mentioned them a decade ago. They're one of the 4 great races, and also apparently Rob Cooper is just bad at naming things. But they were the only race we never got to see from the Big 4, and so fans were quite vocal about that for 9 years, and the writer's answer is crappy koala Ewoks in a fake previously on, and then they get blown up. That's just really funny to me. I also really like Peter DeLuise's cameo in Wormhole Extreme, which all parties agree is pretty indicative of his directorial style.
Bigger!
The entire end credit sequence for the 200th episode is just a series of inside jokes.
And we can get away with that too, because it's cable. The SaveDrLevant.com. Have you seen this site? I mean, it's insane. Apparently they get dozens of hits a month, whatever. I think that's a lot.
And also, I really like in the trailer for Wormhole Extreme, we get one line for each character analog, and I always used Dr. Levant's to explain Daniel to people.
Damn it, Colonel. Just because they're aliens and their skulls are transparent doesn't mean that they don't have rights.
And Drell, the Teal'c analog, doesn't get lines, which is, well, tragically accurate. All of these jokes were run by the actors, so, you know, it's chill. I also like how slightly wrong all the dialogue is in the puppet sketch.
Sergeant, make it spin.
Sir, it doesn't spin.
What? But spinning is so much cooler than not spinning.
And also this joke about the supposed series finale that was the end of season 8.
Yep, it's good to be here.
You weren't there.
And while we're talking about the goofy stuff, let's talk about a whole bunch of miscellaneous running gags and Easter eggs on this show. There's a lot of them on a show that ran for 10 years, and some of them are just like Will Waring liked to hide pineapples somewhere in episodes he directed, or Jack suggesting the solution to a thing is...
Magnets. Magnets. Magnets.
Or Samantha Carter eating blue Jell-O. The most well-known of these is, of course, Teal'c's signature catchphrase.
Indeed, 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 indeed.
By my count, he said it around 150 times over the course of the series.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. Indeed.
Indeed. But my personal favorite gags include the Wizard of Oz references.
You were there, and you were there.
And yeah.
Hail, Dorothy. The Wicked Witch is dead.
It was just a game for a while with the writers to see who could squeeze the most in and get away with it. Eventually, the producers made them stop.
I'm melting! What a world! What a world!
This is, of course, part of the reason behind that sketch in the 200th episode.
Oh, and these guys have their own issues. Boys?
Then there's the giant wrench, which was something director Martin would like to hide in his episodes. Generally, it was coupled with his episode cameo, and he was usually paired with Sergeant Siler for it. Now, I'll swear, I remember once seeing the wrench be so big they had to carry it between them, but I could not find that. If anybody online knows if that clip exists and I didn't just imagine it, please tell me. There's another running bit that's quite subtle. It seems this one was just something Richard Dean Anderson would do anytime his character was handed a drink. He would squint at the contents of the drink, sniff it, and once or twice fish something out of the cup before drinking. And last but not least, there is Daniel dying. This one is well known, and it is extremely funny. So Daniel Jackson has died 21 times over the course of this franchise, according to a very helpful list made by the Tumblr user Stargate Lover. According to this list, he big dies at least 5 times, meaning it doesn't involve clones, time travel, or alternate realities. In my personal onion, I really only count his deaths in Meridian and Reckoning, but they include the events of the 1994 film as well as the episodes The Knox and The Light. And it was just a funny, well-known fact that Daniel died a lot.
What, again?
Can we expect Daniel Jackson to die in these movies once again?
It wouldn't be Stargate if Daniel wasn't dying.
And before I leave the jokes behind, I must tell you a Jaffa joke. I'm going to read most of it so I don't get flagged, but Teal'c will still get the punchline, okay? Okay. A serpent guard, a Horus guard, and a Satesh guard meet on a neutral planet. It is a tense moment. The serpent guard's eyes glow. The Horus guard's beak glistens.
The Satesh guard's nose drips.
10 out of 10 for Teal'c's joke. I love it. Now, I haven't really talked about the spin-offs, have I? Stargate Atlantis began during SG-1's 8th season, and the two ran parallel for 3 years. Atlantis ran for a total of 5 seasons, ending in 2009. If you liked SG-1, you will probably like Atlantis. I have more of a soft spot for SG-1 personally, but I have favorite episodes from Atlantis as well, like Grace Under Pressure, where they ripped off the premise from the SG-1 episode Grace, and it's extremely good. Or Ronan's introductory episode Runner. Also, John Shepard has this thing where he names the Wraith.
I am your death. That is all you need to know.
I prefer Steve.
But as Atlantis ended, we got Stargate Universe, which admittedly had a rough go of it. They were going for a darker tone, clearly drawing influence from the recent success of Battlestar Galactica, and by the end of the 2nd season, we were starting to see the good show this could be, which is unfortunately when it was cancelled. In 2018, we got Stargate Origins, which was a web series giving us some origin story stuff for Catherine Langford. She was the one who invited Daniel to join the Stargate program, and this series tried really hard to do some Indiana Jones vibes, complete with Nazis. It really suffers from being a web series mostly. It's fine. There are worse ways to spend 100 minutes. And then there was... I don't know how to describe Stargate Infinity. By all accounts, MGM just decided to make this on their own. Brad Wright and co. had nothing to do with it. It ran for 1 baffling season and was declared non-canonical, which is hilarious. But not as hilarious as the theme song, which, if one were to try and write a parody of a 90s sci-fi cartoon theme song, I think they would come up with this. Just know I've been singing this song randomly with my friends because it's hilarious. Now, for a while, it seemed that Roland Emmerich was going to reacquire the rights to Stargate and do that planned trilogy, but that seems to have fallen by the wayside, and now there are rumblings from one Mr. Brad Wright about a new Stargate series, which I will absolutely watch if it ever happens. Right now, all we know is people are working on it. Nothing is greenlit, it's just in development, but if it ever happens, I hope it's good. And there's a lot of other things I could point out about Stargate SG-1, like the amount of joy I get from spotting the sets they reused between Atlantis and SG-1. This village set was built with the intent to use it across both shows, but also, this is just the gate room on the Atlantis set during the Wizard of Oz sketch. I see you! I see you! Also, the SGC set had a few component parts, but the reason you see so many long takes at the SGC is because the gate room, the control room, and the boardroom above it are all one connected set, and they like to show it off sometimes. I could talk about the joy I get from spotting actors playing multiple roles across the series, or I could talk about how delightfully lo-fi SG-1 was at times. They talk a lot about the limitations of their budget in commentaries, and those constraints often led to a lot of creativity and practical effects. Like this effect? It's a pane of glass with a bullet in it. Or how about my favorite behind-the-scenes clip illustrating the way they dealt with replicators getting shot in the Season 8 two-parter Reckoning. Or how about the fact that the Colonan skyline was a cardboard mock-up with lots of little lights, or the fact that anytime you see a plain starfield out the window of a spaceship, that's a black blanket with little sequins on it. And the shimmer of the gate's event horizon is actually just some light pointed at a piece of mylar while the dude does this.
This is the shimmer.
Yeah, there it is. Have a look. Every day. Good living right here. Yeah, good living.
We call him Mr. Puddle.
Oh, and did you know? Jack's eyebrow scar first appeared when he got knocked upside the face in the episode 1969, but the scar solidified after the season 3 episode Demons, where he got bonked on the head again in the same spot, and the scar stayed for the rest of Jack's time on the series. Richard Dean Anderson decided to make it a thing and worked with his makeup artist to shave that line in his eyebrow for every appearance he made from then on, all the way into Stargate Universe. Oh, and the Teal'c analog in Wormhole Extreme is played by Teal'c's stand-in, Herbert Duncanson.
For Judge's stand-in?
The premier stand-in for Teal'c.
Keep an eye out for Herbert. They like to put him in the background of scenes sometimes. He got his first ever on-screen lines in the 200th episode, and he was so good! Also, check out Michael Shank's stand-in Kyle doing a pitch-perfect impression of him. Also, Michael Shanks said working with Claudia Black not only reinvigorated his passion for acting on this show, but also just his passion for acting.
I just feel like my heart is gonna burst because it's full of rainbows.
But what brings me back to this show over and over again are the bonds between all of our leads. Over 10 seasons, they're incredibly well-defined, and even Mitchell and Vala get clearly delineated relationships with each other and each of their teammates, and it's all amazing. Whether it's romantic, like the relationship between Sam and Jack, although they never got to be a thing on the series, there's a deleted scene in Stargate Atlantis that implied Sam and Jack were trying to make it work long distance. Or the bond between Teal'c and Jack, which was something that never needed words. Obviously, I love Jack and Daniel because they made each other better, and because when push came to shove, they would do anything for each other. Also, I completely understand why anybody shipped them romantically. I never did, but truly, I get it. Sam and Daniel always felt like siblings in a great way, and Sam and Teal'c have a loving, honest warmth with each other. And fun fact, Amanda Tapping and Chris Judge just decided to play it like they were in a relationship during Unending. So if you shipped them, you were right. Teal'c and Daniel were often the heart and soul of the team, and they could relate to each other in an almost spiritual way. Jonas never quite got to be as well defined in his relationships with the other team members, but I love the way he bonded with Teal'c as the other member who was an outsider to this planet. And I really liked Mitchell and Sam's thing. They were both kind of leaders for the team, and they could really come through for each other. Sam and Vala got to be the girls on the team, and you know.
Oh, welcome back, Samantha. We really did miss you.
I like that a lot. My love of Daniel and Vala should be obvious at this point, but I love how uninhibited Vala is with Teal'c. I just love all these interconnected people and their individual dynamics that are so clearly drawn. And the ones that aren't are the characters who weren't on for 8 to 10 seasons, but they still found their place on the team and in my heart. From what I can tell from the behind the scenes, it seems all these actors genuinely bonded.
They're shooting 3 shows consecutively.
Consecutively.
Concurrently.
Simultaneously. Concoctly.
Many of them spent 10 years together, and it shows.
Thank you all for this award. 2 years in a row. 2! Can you believe it?
It's a giant ice hole.
I put my gun on the rim of it.
You can touch the giant ice hole. It's the biggest ice hole we've ever had on set.
Michael Shanks, Amanda Tapping, and Chris Judge all spent 10 years on Stargate. Yes, I'm counting season 6 for Michael. He was in 3 episodes, I'm counting it. There's a story that circulated from all 3 of them. You can hear it in various interviews and such, but it sounds like they all sort of gravitated towards each other during the auditioning process, and they lived out of each other's pockets during the filming of the pilot. When they filmed Unending, where, by the way, they filmed this final scene last, and Chris Judge in particular was having a hard time not bursting into tears. The emotion on his face here is pretty real, and the moment they finished filming, everybody was crying and hugging.
We laugh every day, and laugh with each other, and be in love with each other, and be okay. Like, truly.
It's a lot of love.
It is a lot of love.
But my favorite bit is that when filming was finished and the set was emptying and this chapter of their lives was over, Amanda, Chris, and Michael all went up to the boardroom and stared out at the gate and the set they had spent 10 years running around in.
We climbed up the stairs to the briefing room and looked down at the gate, just like we had done in 1997 when we first started the series. And it was just a moment the 3 of us took that was just, I'll never ever forget it. It was just really pure.
I'll be honest, while Arc of Truth might be considered a resolution to the Ori plot and Continuum is Continuum, Unending has always been the true ending to this series for me. A slow, introspective character study that allows us to say goodbye to the characters and also allows my trashy trash ship to happen, and that makes me very happy. But also, science fiction is at its best when it's an analog to our reality. And while Stargate loves to have a big MacGuffin that solves all of our problems, realistically there isn't a magic button that stops fascists from being fascist and solves all of our problems. I have no beef with anybody who likes Arc of Truth, but I always found it more compelling that the series ended with them just getting away to fight another day. That's the big victory they get in Unending. No universe-changing doodad, they just get to live. And we know they'll keep fighting, just like we all have to keep fighting, and that's amazing. That will always ring truer for me than some magic cure-all, because science fiction is an existential metaphor that allows us to tell stories
about the human condition. Isaac Asimov once said, individual science fiction stories may seem as trivial as ever to the blinder critics and philosophers of today.
But the core of science fiction, its essence, has become crucial to our salvation, if we are to be saved at all. So if you made it through this absurdly long video, congrats! I hope I convinced you that this is a fun show. Also, if you are already a Stargate fan, yes, I know I did gloss over a bunch of details. It was mostly done for the sake of brevity. Also, please tell me what your favorite episode of Stargate SG-1 is in the comments. And as always, a big thank you to my patrons for allowing me to follow my weird passions and make videos like this one. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.